I wasn't supposed to look. Not that long, at least. But something about her made time stretch, like the air itself had slowed down, waiting to see what I'd do next. It was late afternoon at the auto repair shop, the kind of place where everything smelled faintly of rubber, oil, and dust that never truly left your clothes. The radio hummed an old song I didn't know the name of, and the fluorescent light above her desk flickered like it was half asleep. She was standing by the counter, flipping through a clipboard, reading something with the kind of focus that made you feel like interrupting would be a sin. A woman in her 40s, maybe a little older. Not the polished kind of beauty you see on screens, but something quieter, earned. There was a small streak of gray in her hair, half hidden in the bun she'd twisted up, and a pair of reading glasses perched low on her nose. I'd come in to pick up my uncle's truck, nothing special. I should have signed the papers and left. But then she looked up. Our eyes met. Just for a second. Then again. And that's when I realized I was staring. Not the kind of staring you can excuse as a mistake. This was the kind where you try to look away and somehow can't. My throat tightened, and I pretended to cough, shifting my weight like it would undo the silence between us. She didn't look away, though. Not immediately. She just gave this small, knowing smile, like she'd caught me, but wasn't angry. Like she'd been waiting for it. The moment broke when the phone rang. She picked it up, voice calm, professional, the kind of tone that had probably smoothed over 1,000 bad customer moods. I tried not to listen, but her voice carried anyway. Low, unhurried, steady. While she spoke, I noticed the details that made her seem both unreachable and strangely human. A gold ring, not on the wedding finger. The faint mark of it still there, maybe. A pen clipped neatly to her shirt pocket. Nails clean but chipped on the edges, like she used her hands more than people thought. She hung up and glanced back at me. You're here for the F-150? Yeah, I said. My voice came out rougher than I meant. My uncle's. Said it'd be ready today. She nodded, walked around the counter, and for a moment, the scent of her perfume, something light, not floral, cut through the smell of grease. She led me outside to the truck bay, where the sunlight spilled across the floor in pale strips. I had the guys fix that belt noise, she said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. It should stop whining now. I watched the way she ran her fingers along the side mirror, checking for dust like it mattered. Thanks, I said. Guess I'll let him know. She smiled again. Not the kind you give a stranger out of politeness. This one was softer. I remember when he brought you in last time, she said. You were quieter then. I blinked. You remember that? She shrugged, eyes lingering for a second too long. I noticed things. There was a pause. A thin, electric silence that filled the space between the hum of tools and the sound of a car door closing somewhere far off. I wanted to say something, but nothing fit. Every word that came to mind felt either too much or not enough. She broke it gently. Keys are on the seat, she said, then turned back toward the office. I stood there longer than I should have, pretending to check the engine. By the time I finally got into the truck, she was gone from view. But her voice, her smile, it stayed. And later that night, when I caught myself replaying that moment, her looking up, the small smile she gave, I realized something I didn't want to admit. She hadn't just caught me staring. She'd caught something else too, and I still couldn't tell what it was. She didn't seem surprised to see me again, though I hadn't planned on coming back so soon. My uncle's truck had been running fine. There was no reason to return. But when he mentioned the paperwork might still need signing, I volunteered before he even finished the sentence. It was quieter this time. Late morning, sunlight filtering through the shop's front windows, cutting pale shapes across the counter. She was sitting behind it, glasses on, reading something with her chin propped on her hand. A cup of coffee sat nearby, half full, cold by the look of it. When the bell above the door rang, she looked up. Her expression didn't change much, but something in her eyes flickered. Recognition, maybe, or just curiosity. You again, she said, voice even, with a trace of a smile. Paperwork, right? I nodded, feeling 12 instead of 24. Yeah. My uncle said there were a few forms left. She gestured to the counter, pulling a folder closer. Her nails tapped lightly against the paper as she flipped through the pages. I noticed a faint tremor in her fingers. Not nervousness, Exactly, but fatigue. The kind that sinks in after years of keeping things together. You work here full-time? I asked, just to fill the silence. Too much of the time, she replied, still flipping. Then, after a pause, I used to have help. My son moved out last year. Haven't quite learned how to stop doing everything myself. Something about the way she said it, like she was talking more to herself than to me, made the air feel heavier. I didn't know what to say, so I watched her instead. The small creases near her eyes when she squinted, the way she bit her lip before initialing a page, the faint smudge of ink on her thumb. Details that shouldn't matter, but did. She caught me looking and gave a small, tired smile. You must think I complain a lot. No, I said quickly. You just sound like someone who doesn't get listened to enough. That stopped her. She looked up, meeting my eyes, and for the first time, didn't look away. Something unspoken passed between us, something that made me wish I'd said less and more at the same time. Then she blinked, breaking the moment with a small laugh that wasn't quite laughter. You're observant, she said softly. That can be dangerous. The words lingered. She signed the last page, slid it across to me, and leaned back. I noticed how she flexed her wrist, rubbing at a faint scar near her palm, like a habit she didn't realize she had. You can tell your uncle everything's squared away now, she said. Right. I hesitated, then added, do you ever get time off? She gave a short exhale that might have been a laugh. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I did. The conversation could have ended there. It probably should have. But as I turned to leave, she said quietly, thanks for coming by. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Soft, like she hadn't meant to let it slip. I looked back. She was already gathering papers again, pretending to focus. But her hand froze for a moment on the folder's edge, her knuckles pale from holding too tight. That image, her stillness, her restraint, stayed with me longer than I expected. And when I stepped outside, the sunlight felt colder than it had a moment ago. It was raining the night I stayed late. Not the kind of soft rain that cools the air, but the steady, relentless kind that soaks everything before you realize it's begun. She'd asked if I could help move a few boxes from the back room. Supplies, invoices, things that looked older than me. I said yes before thinking about what it meant. Just her and me. After hours, the whole shop quiet except for the hum of the old ceiling fan and the distant percussion of rain on metal. She was different at night. Not colder, just quieter. Like the mask she wore all day didn't fit as tightly when the customers were gone. She'd tied her hair back loosely this time, a few strands falling around her face, softening the sharpness of her usual composure. Careful with that one, she said, nodding to a box on the shelf above me. It's heavier than it looks. I reached up anyway. I got it. You always say that. She said it with a half smile, half warning, and I couldn't tell which part she meant. When I set the box down, a small puff of dust rose between us, catching in the light. We both laughed quietly, one of those unintentional, fragile laughs that break tension instead of building it. The rain grew louder. The shop felt smaller. When I turned, she was closer than before, holding a folder against her chest. For a second, we were standing so near I could see the faint freckles across her collarbone, the slight tremble of her breath when she realized how close we were. Neither of us moved. Storm's getting worse, I said, voice low. Yeah. Her tone was steady, but she didn't step back. You can wait it out here if you want. Roads flood fast around this part of town. Thanks, I said. It came out softer than I meant. Almost intimate. She turned away, maybe to break the spell, but her hand brushed mine as she did. Barely. A flicker of warmth. The kind that shouldn't mean anything but did. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. She froze. The screen lit up with a name she didn't answer, just stared at. Her jaw tightened. The light in her eyes dimmed a little. You can take it, I said quietly. She shook her head. No, it's nothing. But the way she said it told me it wasn't. Silence stretched again, the kind filled with words neither of us were ready to say. I leaned against the counter, trying to look anywhere but her. The rain outside blurred the world into gray. Finally, she exhaled and said, You shouldn't stay too long. People might get the wrong idea. Her voice cracked slightly at the end, barely, but I heard it. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care what people thought. that the wrong idea might not be wrong at all. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded, pretending to understand boundaries that didn't feel real anymore. She moved toward the door, meaning to lock it behind me. I followed her, each step heavier than it should have been. At the threshold, lightning flashed, painting her face in brief white light. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might say something. Her lips parted. My breath caught. Then she just whispered, "Good night," and closed the door gently between us. The sound of the lock sliding into place echoed louder than the rain. And for the first time, I wished it hadn't. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I'd stopped by to drop off a wrench I'd borrowed weeks ago, an excuse so thin I almost turned around halfway there. But I didn't. Something in me wanted to see if that silence between us was still there, or if it had shifted into something neither of us could name. The shop was closed for the day. The front lights were dim. The open sign flipped the wrong way. I could see her through the office window, sitting at her desk, shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Not composed, not collected, just tired. I knocked lightly. She looked up, startled, then smiled. A reflex, not a real one. "Hey," I said, stepping inside. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just thought you might need this back. I held up the wrench like it was a peace offering. She stared at it, then at me. "You could have left it in the box outside." "I know. So why didn't you?" The question landed somewhere between curiosity and accusation. I didn't have an answer that sounded right. Didn't feel like leaving it there, I said finally. That earned a quiet laugh, barely a breath of sound. She stood, stretching her arms slowly, like she'd been sitting too long. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she said. "People might start to talk." I nodded. "You've said that before. And you didn't listen before." "Yeah," I said softly. "Guess I didn't." Something in her face faltered, like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. The rain from the night before had left streaks on the window, catching the late sun in pale reflections. It painted her skin in shifting gold and gray. "I don't know what this is," she said suddenly. Her voice trembled on the edges, like she was holding something fragile between her teeth. "You come in, you look at me like you see something I don't. And I can't decide if that's kind or cruel." I swallowed, throat dry. "It's not cruel." "Then what is it?" she asked, stepping closer. "Because it's not nothing." The air thickened between us, too full of things unsaid. She was standing close enough that I could see the pulse in her neck, the way her breath caught before she forced herself to breathe again. "It's just," I started but stopped. The word just sounded small, dishonest. "It's not supposed to be anything," she said quickly, almost to convince herself. "I'm too old for this." Don't," I cut in. "Don't finish that." Her mouth closed. The silence after that felt like standing on the edge of something deep, both of us too scared to look down. She turned away first, pressing her palms against the desk as if it might hold her steady. "I don't even know what I want anymore," she said, barely above a whisper. "Some days I think I just want someone to stay until the room stops feeling so empty." That broke something in me. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it, like she'd never meant for me to hear it aloud. I took a step toward her, then stopped. Close enough to feel the warmth off her skin, not close enough to cross that invisible line. She didn't look at me when she said, "We can't keep pretending this is nothing." Her voice was steady now, resigned. Then, softer, almost trembling. "But I don't know how to make it stop." I didn't see her for almost a week. Every day, I told myself I wouldn't drive by the shop. I wouldn't check if her car was parked out front or if the office lights were still on after dark. But I did every time. The place stayed closed for 3 days straight, blinds half drawn, her absence pressing down on the quiet street like a secret. When she finally called, her voice was smaller than I remembered. "Could you stop by? There's something I need help with," she said. No explanation, just that. When I arrived, the shop looked different, emptier. She'd cleared the counter, stacked boxes near the door, and unplugged the radio that usually filled the silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the vending machine in the corner. She was sitting at her desk again, not looking up. A small cardboard box set open in front of her, filled with old photographs and letters, edges worn, corners curled. "I'm selling the place," she said before I could ask anything. It's time. Her voice was calm, practiced, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting with a photograph she hadn't put down since I walked in. I stepped closer. You sure? She nodded once. This place used to mean something. Now it just feels heavy. The photo she was holding slipped slightly, and I caught a glimpse before she tucked it away. A young man, early 20s maybe, standing beside her. Same shop, same counter. He looked a little like me. I didn't ask right away, but I couldn't stop seeing the image. His smile, her arm looped loosely around his shoulders. The kind of closeness you don't fake. Finally, I said, who was he? She hesitated. Then, my son. Her voice cracked just enough for me to hear the truth beneath it. He died 5 years ago. Motorcycle accident. He worked here with me. Every day. This was his place as much as mine. The air seemed to thin around us. I didn't mean to remind you, I started, but she shook her head. You didn't, she said softly. You just brought back how it felt. When he was still around. The way he used to look at me like I still had answers. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I wanted to reach out, to offer something real, but everything felt clumsy, small. I'm sorry, I said. It sounded useless. She gave a faint smile, eyes wet but steady. Don't be. You didn't take anything from me. Then she looked up, really looked, and something changed in the way she saw me. Not the way she had before, when there was curiosity or guilt. This was different. Raw. Honest. You reminded me I could still feel something, she said. And that scared me more than I expected. The words landed between us like the softest blow, quiet but absolute. She reached into the box, pulled out the photograph again, and held it for a moment before turning it face down on the desk. Then, almost whispering, you even smile like him. I didn't move. Couldn't. The rain had started again outside, faint against the windows. It filled the silence that neither of us knew how to break. And for the first time, I understood. This wasn't just about longing anymore. It was about loss finding somewhere new to live. The shop was almost empty now. Half the shelves were bare, the smell of oil fading into something faint and sad, like the end of a season you didn't realize was over until it was gone. I came by to help her pack. She hadn't asked, but I couldn't stay away. She was in the office, sorting through old invoices with the radio off. The quiet felt heavier than usual, but not hostile, just waiting. You don't have to stay, she said when I walked in. I know. Then why do you? Because it feels wrong not to. That made her pause. She looked up, her expression unreadable, the corners of her mouth trembling between a smile and something else. You always say things like that, she murmured. Simple, and they stay with me longer than they should. I set down the box I'd been carrying. You say that like it's a bad thing. Sometimes it is. She sighed, rubbing her hands together. You shouldn't be here, helping me bury ghosts that aren't yours. I don't think that's what I'm doing, I said. I think I'm helping you make peace with them. For a moment, neither of us moved. The afternoon light had gone soft, stretching thin gold lines across the floor. Dust floated in the air between us, and everything felt suspended. Time, sound, breath. She sat down, motioning to the chair across from her. Sit. Just for a minute. I did. We didn't talk much. She sorted through a few more papers, set aside a photo, closed a drawer. Every small motion felt deliberate, as if she were building the courage to say something she'd rehearsed 100 times and never spoken. Finally, she said, you remind me of everything I thought I'd stopped missing. Not because you're him, but because you're not. Because you look at me like I'm still someone worth seeing. I didn't answer right away. There wasn't anything that could make that moment better. So I just watched her, her tired eyes, the faint crease at the edge of her mouth, the way her hand trembled before she rested it on the desk. Without thinking, I reached across the space and covered it with mine. She didn't pull away. Her skin was warm, dry, familiar in a way that startled me. She exhaled slowly, the sound closer to a release than a sigh. We both know this doesn't make sense, she whispered. I know, and that it can't last. I know that too. Her fingers tightened just slightly around mine. But for now, she said, it's enough. We stayed like that for a long time. No words, no plans, just two people sitting in the hollow of something fragile and true. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere, a door closed. The world went on, uncaring. She leaned forward, forehead resting lightly against mine. Not a kiss, not a promise. Just a small, wordless confession that neither of us needed to name. When she finally spoke again, her voice was almost gone. Let's just stay here a little longer. And we did, quietly, until the light began to fade. It's been months since that afternoon in the shop. The for sale sign is gone now, replaced by a bright new logo and a stranger's name on the window. I still drive by sometimes, out of habit. I don't stop anymore. I just slow down enough to see if the office light is still on, though I know it isn't. She left town a few weeks after the sale went through. Didn't say where, only that she needed somewhere quieter, somewhere that doesn't smell like engine grease and old coffee. I told her I understood. Maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want her to see how much it hurt to say goodbye. I haven't heard from her since. No calls. No messages. Just the silence that follows something honest and unrepeatable. And yet, I still catch traces of her in the small things. When it rains hard enough to blur the world. When a woman at the counter laughs the way she used to. When I find myself staring at a photograph too long. What surprised me most wasn't that she left. It's that she changed something in me before she did. She made me notice. The small details I used to overlook. The way people pause before answering. How they smile when they're trying not to cry. How silence isn't always empty. Before her, I thought love was supposed to be loud. Obvious. A spark you could see from a mile away. But what we had wasn't that. It was quieter, sadder, and somehow more real. She once said I reminded her that she could still feel something. What I never told her was that she taught me the same thing, just from the other side of it. She showed me that love isn't about how long it lasts, but about what it wakes up in you while it's there. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about me, wherever she ended up. If she still drinks her coffee half cold. If she still hums when she's concentrating. If she still looks at the rain like it's saying something only she can hear. I don't know. But I like to think she's somewhere with the windows open, the air quiet. Maybe even smiling at the thought of some kid who couldn't stop looking at her one ordinary afternoon. And maybe, in her own way, she remembers that moment too. The way our silence said everything we were too scared to admit. Because even now, after all this time, I still believe some connections don't fade. They just live differently, quieter, softer, somewhere beneath the skin. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?